The courtroom was heavy with the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. My brother Benedict stood at the front, using clinical precision to label me unstable, a danger to myself. Behind him, my parents well performed the part of weeping aristocrats. Tears, silk handkerchiefs, the whole show. I didn't scream, didn't object. I only touched the recorder in my pocket. The text Benedict had sent me hours before echoed in my mind. We are doing this because we love you. But I knew in that moment love had nothing to do with it. This wasn't love. It was their alibi. 3 months ago, everything changed. The old library of my grandfather's estate was filled with the scent of dust and leather-bound books, a smell that seemed to hold the weight of the family's secrets. We had gathered there, all of us, to hear the reading of his will. I remember the silence in the room, the kind that presses down on your chest, suffocating you. My family sat around the long oak table, poised, expecting the usual. Benedict would inherit, and the rest of us would fall in line, grateful for whatever crumbs we were thrown. But that day, my grandfather had other plans. He left the entire estate, the $15 million, and his priceless art collection. Everything to me. To me, not Benedict, not my parents, not the golden child they'd always revered. It felt like a thunderclap in a room full of stillness. A split-second silence followed the reading, and then chaos erupted. Benedict's face turned an unsettling shade of white, a look I'd never seen on him before. It was shock, yes, but more than that, it was betrayal. He wasn't the heir. He wasn't the one who had been chosen. The look he gave me, the cold fire of hatred behind his mask of confusion, was enough to make my stomach drop. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, as my parents sat frozen, their eyes wide, staring at the lawyer as if somehow expecting him to take back what he had just said, but there was no going back. This wasn't just about money. It was about power, and my grandfather had seen through the carefully constructed illusions. He knew what I had always known deep down. Benedict was not the success everyone believed him to be. He was the black hole of the family, sucking everything in, leaving nothing but emptiness. He'd spent years hiding the gambling debts, trying to pass them off as bad investments. But my grandfather had seen it all, every failure Benedict tried to bury. And when the lawyer's voice had fallen silent, the truth had come crashing down. Benedict was a star of this family, the one they all fawned over, the one they had built their entire world around. And I was just the backdrop. I was the one who lived in the carriage house, the one who didn't fit into the picture-perfect life they had crafted. The only time I ever mattered was when I reflected their success or absorbed their failures. But when the will was read, everything shifted. My grandfather had chosen me. Not because I was the perfect child, not because I fit their mold, but because I was the one who could see through the cracks. I was the one who saw their cruelty for what it was. When the lawyer finished reading, the quiet that followed felt heavy. I felt my parents gaze on me, their disappointment radiating through the air like a slow burn. My mother Genevieve dried her eyes and immediately turned to me. There was no pride, no love, just a cold, calculating intensity. "Benedict is in trouble," she said, her voice low, urgent. "He owes dangerous people money. We need to sell the estate now. We have to save the family name." Those words, "save the family name," struck me like a slap. I looked at her sitting there in her silk dress, so pristine, so perfect. And I realized with a painful clarity that I had never truly been a daughter to them. I was utility. I wasn't the heir. I wasn't the beloved child. I was the scapegoat, the one they poured all their shame into so they could stay untarnished. It had always been this way. Every time Benedict failed, it was my fault. When he crashed his car, it was because I upset him. When he didn't pass a test, it was because I distracted him. I was the designated loser in a game rigged for him to win. And now, with my grandfather's will, I had disrupted everything. They needed me to be weak, invisible, so Benedict could shine. But I refused to play my role. I wasn't going to sell the estate to cover Benedict's debts. I wasn't going to hand over my future to save their precious golden child. For the first time in my life, I stood up and said no. I told them I wasn't selling. I wasn't going to erase the past for them. I was going to turn the estate into a sanctuary for women who had suffered, who had been beaten down by life, just like I had. A place for them to heal through art. And that was the moment I knew the war had begun. My father's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. Benedict, always so controlled, laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of joy. It was cold, sharp like a blade. You would put strangers in our home before you'd help your own flesh and blood. He said, his eyes burning with contempt, and I looked at him, dead in the eyes, and said, yes, because they deserve a safe place. You deserve a consequence. I could feel the air shift, thickening with every word. I wasn't the obedient daughter. I wasn't the scapegoat anymore. I was the enemy. The moment I spoke those words, I'm not selling the estate. The silence that followed was suffocating. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes with peace. It was thick, heavy, filled with disbelief and fury. I stood there feeling the weight of their eyes on me, each one a silent accusation. My parents didn't say a word at first, but their faces told everything. My mother's smile, usually so perfect and practiced, dropped, replaced by something darker, something sharp. She hadn't expected this. Neither had my father. I could feel their anger simmering, but it wasn't until Benedict opened his mouth that the full force of their outrage hit me. You would put strangers above your own family. He spat, his voice laced with venom. His words weren't just a question. They were an accusation, a condemnation. He was the golden child, the one they had built everything around, and I, in his eyes, had just betrayed him. He had always been the center of their universe, the one they expected to shine, while I had always been the shadow, quiet, unnoticed, the one who absorbed their failures and never demanded anything. And now, for the first time, I had dared to stand up for myself, to stake a claim on my future. You're putting your needs above the family's, Benedict continued, his voice shaking with rage. This is about your ego, not about what's right. His words cut, but they didn't pierce me like they once would have. Instead, they fueled something deep inside me, a fire I didn't know I had. For so long, I had been the one who accepted their blame, their manipulation. I had been the one who took the fall for everything, the one who stayed silent to keep the peace. But this time was different. I wasn't going to be the pawn in their game anymore. I wasn't going to play the role they had cast me in. I wasn't going to be invisible any longer. No, I said, my voice firm, steady. I'm not putting my ego above anyone. I'm doing what's right. The words felt like they came from somewhere deep inside, somewhere I had locked away for years. I wasn't just rejecting the estate. I was rejecting the idea that I had no voice, no power, no future. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for the estate. I was fighting for my life, for my independence, for the right to decide who I was and what I wanted. My parents looked at me, their faces twisted with something close to disgust, but there was a flicker of something else there too. Fear. Fear that I might actually be serious. Fear that they might lose control of me forever. Benedict laughed, but it wasn't the laughter of someone who was in control. It was hollow forced. He knew he had lost and he hated it. He hated that I had taken the one thing he thought was rightfully his. But there was no going back. The choice had been made. I wasn't going to sell the estate to pay off his debts to erase the past for him. I wasn't going to pretend that the Vance family was anything but a broken shell. They were a house of cards built on lies and manipulation, and I refused to be part of it anymore. The war had begun, and there was no turning back now. As I stood there staring them down, I knew they would never forgive me for this. I had become the enemy in their eyes, the one who had broken their perfect little world. But that was fine with me. I had spent my whole life being invisible. Now I was finally seen. I had always thought of my studio as a sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in my art, where the world outside could disappear. But that afternoon, as I walked through the door, the smell of linseed oil and cedar, which had always comforted me, was replaced by something sharp, metallic. My heart sank in an instant. The room, once a haven of creation, was in ruins. My easel is overturned. The canvas I had been working on for months, my grandfather's portrait, was no longer a work of art. It had been destroyed. Slashed from top to bottom, the fabric hung in ribbons like flayed skin. The paint, once so carefully applied, was now a grotesque splatter of cadmium red, streaked across the floor and walls like a crime scene. It was violence, pure and simple. But it wasn't just vandalism, it was a message, a warning. My hands shook. As I reached for the canvas, my fingers brushing against the jagged edges. I could hardly breathe, the weight of what I was seeing pressing down on me like a physical force. I knew even before I heard his voice that this was no random act. This was calculated. This was deliberate. And then from the shadows of the room, I heard him. Benedict. "Oh, Octavia," he said, stepping into the dim light, his voice sweet, almost mocking. "Look what you've done." He looked at the wreckage with feigned concern, his face twisted in a mask of tragic empathy. But his eyes, those eyes told me everything I needed to know. There was no remorse there, no guilt, only cold, dead calculation. He wasn't sorry. He was pleased. I could see the sick satisfaction written across his face. He had done this and he was reveling in it. I stood frozen, my mind racing, my heart thudding in my chest. What was he playing at? Why this? Why now? As I tried to steady myself, he continued, his voice now soft, like he was speaking to a child who didn't understand. "I tried to tell Mom and Dad you were spiraling," he said, shaking his head in mock sorrow. "But they didn't want to believe it. Violent outbursts, destruction of property. It's a textbook manic episode." His words cut through the air like knives. He was framing me. He was trying to make me the crazy one. It was all so clear now. I wasn't just dealing with a brother who was angry about losing the estate. I was dealing with someone who was willing to destroy me, literally and figuratively, to get what he wanted. He was willing to throw me under the bus, to paint me as unstable, as dangerous, just to cover his own tracks. And the worst part, I'd never even seen it coming. "Get out," I whispered. My voice barely a sound, so small in the face of what was happening. But Benedict didn't leave. Instead, he moved closer, stepping over the shattered remains of the portrait, like it was nothing. He opened the door to the studio and his voice grew louder, more insistent. "I can't do that," he said, his tone turning patronizing. "I called for help, for your own good." The words seemed to hang in the air, thick and suffocating. He wasn't just trying to manipulate me. He was trying to manipulate the entire situation. He was counting on me to react, to scream, to fall apart, because that's exactly what he needed to happen. He needed me to be the crazy sister who couldn't keep her cool, the unstable woman who was dangerous to herself. But I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. Not now. Not ever. As the sirens outside began to grow louder, I realized what he had done. He had set me up. He had planted the idea that I was a danger to myself, and now he was going to bring in the officers to confirm it. I felt the walls closing in, but instead of reacting, instead of showing any emotion, I went cold. I locked my jaw, swallowed my fear, and allowed my face to go blank. I gave him nothing. When the officers arrived, Benedict led them in with a sense of triumph, as though he had already won. "In here," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "Please, be gentle. She's not herself. She's off her medication." I didn't fight him. I didn't yell. I just stood there, trembling but composed like a stone. When they asked me to come with them, I didn't resist. I didn't argue. I turned around and offered them my wrists, silent. Benedict's smile faltered for a moment, but only for a moment. He wanted the scene. He wanted the drama. He wanted me to lose control so he could have me exactly where he wanted me. But I wasn't going to give him that. As they handcuffed me, I watched Benedict's face, the look of disbelief crossing it as he realized his plan had unraveled. I was going to make him see just how wrong he was, and I wasn't going to let him take everything from me. The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed above me, relentless and unforgiving, like a constant reminder that I was trapped. I had been taken in, locked away in a sterile room with no windows, no escape. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic, a smell that clung to everything, reminding me that I was now part of a system that didn't believe in the truth. They stripped me of my personal belongings, my phone, my shoelaces, leaving me with nothing but the harsh, cold reality of what I was facing. But what they didn't know was that I had already started playing the game. As doctors came in asking their questions, probing for signs of instability, I answered them calmly. I had learned a long time ago that the less you give away, the more control you have. They wanted me to crack, to show them the craziness they had already decided was there. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. I knew what they were trying to do, and I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of proving them right. I sat on the cot, my back straight, my face blank, letting the hours stretch on in silence. I wasn't surrendering. I was waiting for the moment when I could expose the truth. Every minute I spent in that room, without breaking, was another crack in their story, another piece of their facade coming undone. They had underestimated me. They thought they could break me, force me into submission and make me bow to their version of the world. But I wasn't like the others. I wasn't their scapegoat anymore. I wasn't the obedient daughter who always took the fall. I was something else now, something stronger. I was playing the long game, and I had patience. The hours dragged on, but I didn't lose my composure. Every doctor who came in was just another piece of the puzzle. Every question they asked, every test they ran, it was all just a step in the plan. I knew that when the time came, I would be ready. I would expose them all. But for now, I would stay quiet. I would stay still, and I would wait. When I walked out of that psychiatric hold, I expected to face another battle: legal papers, a restraining order, something loud. But instead, I found my parents waiting on my front porch, looking almost normal. Genevieve, my mother, was wearing a simple cotton dress, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked older, softer, almost vulnerable. Alistair, my father, stood behind her, holding a casserole dish like some kind of offering. It was the kind of scene you'd expect from a family trying to make amends, a moment of contrition. And yet something felt off. My heart twisted as they invited me to dinner, promising a fresh start or reconciliation. They spoke of cutting Benedict off, of starting over. But I could feel the weight of their words, the way they pressed down on me, making me wonder if this was really about healing or if it was yet another performance. Their remorse was too perfect, too well timed. It was as if they had rehearsed it, planned it all along. The more they spoke, the more I realized that their version of reconciliation wasn't about forgiveness or family. It was about control. The dinner they were inviting me to wasn't a gesture of love. It was a setup. They weren't cutting Benedict off. They were trying to force me into submission, to manipulate me into signing away my control of the estate. I wasn't going to play along. Not this time. I could see through the facade, and I knew that whatever game they were playing, I was going to turn the tables. The courtroom was filled with the kind of tension that felt like it could snap at any moment. Benedict sat at the front, his face calm and composed, a practiced mask of concern. He was telling his story, painting me as the unstable sister who needed to be controlled, the woman who had lost it. The judge was listening, nodding along as Benedict spun his narrative, playing the part of the concerned brother, the family hero, trying to save me from myself. My parents sat behind him, their faces a picture of practiced grief, their eyes casting occasional glances toward me as if they too were convinced of the story he was telling. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had something they couldn't erase. A secret weapon. The moment the courtroom went quiet, I motioned to my lawyer, who stood up and handed over the first piece of evidence. The screen flickered on, and there it was, the video of my family's confession. Benedict, my parents, all of them, speaking in hushed tones about their plan to frame me to take control of the estate. I watched their faces as they realized what was happening, the shock, the horror, the panic. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't thought I would be prepared. And then just as they started to recover from that blow, my lawyer played the next piece of evidence. The video of Benedict in my studio destroying my grandfather's painting. He hadn't counted on me documenting everything. He hadn't counted on my quiet resolve, my patience. But I had outsmarted them all. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't fought. I had simply waited, watched, and planned. And now the truth was laid bare. Benedict's face twisted with rage as the room took in the full extent of his lies. The judge's eyes flicked between the video and Benedict, and I saw it the moment when the tide turned. This wasn't my victory in a loud, triumphant way. It was quieter, more powerful. I had won not through force or anger, this through strategy, through patience. And in that moment, as the judge prepared to make his ruling, I knew this time it was my family who would pay the price. Months have passed since that day in court, and the estate is no longer a symbol of betrayal. It's become something far more powerful in Art Sanctuary, a place where women who face the kind of darkness I once did can heal. My grandfather's ruined portrait hangs on the wall, not as a symbol of destruction, but of survival. It stands as proof that no matter how broken you may seem, there's always a way forward. As I walk through these halls now, I finally feel free. Free from their lies, free from their manipulation. The weight is gone. This victory wasn't just mine. It was for everyone who's ever been silenced, ever been forced into the shadows. So if you found something in this story that resonates, something that gives you strength, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, sometimes the hardest battles lead to the greatest freedom.